Like most doctors in the United States, I have never seen a single case of measles. In medical school, we learned that it was a harmless childhood illness. So it really made me surprised reading about these huge outbreaks of measles that we've been having this year in Texas. Because patients are saying they are having horrible symptoms. And these are adults who were vaccinated as children. What is going on? This doesn't sound harmless to me. And when I have a question like this, I like to look at the scientific literature. But in this case, it's difficult because measles has never infected adults. Measles is one of the most contagious viruses known to mankind. Before vaccines were developed, everybody got it as children. And if you survived, you had lifelong immunity, and so adults never got measles. You have to go back, it turns out, to the 18th century before you can start reading about descriptions of adults getting measles. And let me tell you, it is not pretty. The best story is the 1824 visit of the king and queen of what is now Hawaii to England. At this time, Hawaii was facing serious political and social challenges due to modernization. And the king was always suspicious of the United States and was interested in visiting England and talking to King George IV directly. So in November of 1823, the king, his favorite queen, and 10 members of his entourage, they boarded a ship and set sail for England. When they arrived on May 17, 1824, they received a 21-gun salute. The London newspapers were fascinated by their mannerisms, their dress, their appearance, and published many, many stories. And a crowd actually formed outside of their hotel every day. King George IV apparently wasn't that interested in meeting with the savages. So while they were waiting, friendly British lords helped them obtain proper English dress and step out into English society. So there are newspaper stories about visits to the theater, receptions, and parties. But the most important, from a medical point of view, happened on day 20. It was to the Royal Military Asylum, which was a school for children of soldiers. And where there are children, there are infectious diseases. A week after this visit was when the entire party started having symptoms of measles. And it was classic. It was exactly the right time period. They had the classic symptoms and signs. And it was the queen who really had the most difficult course. On day 52, she died of measles pneumonia at the age of 22. The king seemed to be doing better at the beginning, but 6 days after the queen passed away, so did the king at the age of 27. Their bodies were embalmed, they lay in state, and they were sent back to Hawaii. This story illustrates perfectly what happens when measles hits a population with zero prior immunity. Within 2 weeks of the visit to the Royal Military Asylum, all 12 members of the royal party were infected with measles, and within a month, 2 of them, the king and queen, both young adults, healthy, had passed away. That's a 17% death rate, and that's actually within the range of what happens when measles hits what a so-called first contact population. Just a few years later was the epidemic of 1848 to 1849, and measles hit the islands and caused a huge wave of death and destruction. Around 10,000 people died, according to the best estimates, and this was over 10% of the population. Missionaries described whole villages sick at the same time. There weren't enough healthy people to cook and clean for the ones who were sick, and this probably contributed to the very high infant mortality. Missionaries described the number of bodies being so many that coffins simply could not be built for them. What these stories show is that in populations that are fully susceptible to measles, adults can have similar death rates as children. Children under 5 are always going to be the highest risk for measles. Their immune systems are not fully developed and they can't stop effectively the viral replication. But adults in populations with no prior measles exposure can have very high death rates as well. The US is not a first contact population. The elderly who were born before the 1960s, they were all infected with measles and have immunity. Other adults younger than that had very high rates of vaccination and are also immune. So it's really the children who are unvaccinated, under 5, who are most vulnerable to measles. But the anti-vax movement is not going away anytime soon, and unvaccinated children grow up to be unvaccinated adults. So we're going to see unvaccinated adults infected with measles. And my prediction from the scientific literature of measles in first contact populations from the 1800s is that we're going to see deaths from measles in adults as well as children. In my channel, I try to explain about infectious diseases and global health. I hope you enjoyed this historical look at measles, and I hope I'll see you next time.